Hey, everybody. Rob Smith, pronouns he, they, and I got to apologize. I'm from Macy's. I show up with decks. I can't help but not show up with a presentation. So if you'll bear with me before, some amazing questions, which I previewed. I never look at questions, and I snuck a look at them because I always like to be surprised, and they're really, really good questions, so I'll make sure to have time for that. So just a real quick preview about who Phluid is. First of all, there's a lot in the name. Phluid is the ability to navigate between two spaces easily, like water. And the pH represents balance. This idea that we could have balance within us creates harmony. And project, because we're working together, not one person can make change, but only a group of people work together to make change. So that's the Phluid project. So this is me. I always like to start off first as a human, as opposed to a resume. So I am a husband. I'm a member of the queer community. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a human rights activist. Let's see, I'm a yogi. What else? I love to travel, but I'm also, professionally, I am the CEO and founder of Phluid, which includes the Phluid Project, Get Phluid, and the Phluid Foundation. And let's see what else. I spent 22 years at Macy's, and then I worked 2 years for Victoria's Secret, and then I spent 5 years as Chief Product Officer for Levi's and Nike. So I'm one of you, and have worked in corporate America for 30 years. And then, gosh, I'm also on the board of directors for Steve Madden, and I'm an executive in residence for Wonderkind and also Titanium Worldwide. Yep, that's me. Okay, so let's talk about the Phluid Project. So the Phluid Project is started off 4 years ago with the world's first gender-free store on NoHo on Great Jones of Broadway. I'm not sure, did anybody ever make it to the store? Thank you for doing it. It was probably one of the most magical places in the world. It was 2/3 retail, completely gender-free. No such thing as a boys or girls section or men's or women's. It was just, if you want to wear a dress, if you want to wear makeup, if you want to wear high heels, this is the place for you. But the other third was a community space. It was a coffee shop with bleacher seating. During the day, you could hang out with friends. But at night, it turned into a bar, an open bar every single night, free drinks, but also fashion shows, panel discussions, comedy night, poetry reading, and there was something happening every night for the community. And it really became a place to pull people together that really never had a place of belonging. So the mission statement is fun. Starting a company, I was talking about a company 200 years old, talking about values. I was able to build a company from scratch. And the foundation of the company and the mission is to challenge boundaries with humanity. So we question everything. Why is it this way? Why does it have to be this way? And can it be different? And so challenging everything, but doing it with humanity. And then the pillars of the company are values, which are acceptance, balance, integrity, intention, openness, and fearlessness. And this is a company, these words sit on my desk. They sit on our fragrance collection. They're the name of our scents. That's something that I believe in, and we always go back to them. And when we make decisions, we go back to our mission statement and our values all the time. Let's see. That's a lot of words. Okay, so why does this matter? Why does it matter? Because right now, when it comes to shopping, 60% of Gen Zers shop across gender lines. They're not stuck in the boys or girls, men's or women's section. They shop across gender lines, and you see more and more companies getting into this space because it is not a trend, it's a movement. This says half of young people at Gen Z identify as not strictly heterosexual. If you break down further, 21% of adult Gen Zers identify as LGBTQ. That is a staggering number. According to Marjorie Taylor Greene, heterosexuals will no longer exist in 20 years. That was literally her June 1st post. God love her. Let's see. So let's go on. Okay, next. So this is how Phluid shows up. Phluid shows up. This is 5 stars. I'm pretty sure we're going to add a 6-star, make it a 6-pointed star pretty soon. But we show up, first of all, with our direct-to-consumer business. Basically took the store concept and moved it online. So we sell product for Phluid. You navigate without gender, and there's lots of other purpose-driven brands, queer-owned brands, trans-owned brands, black-owned brands, indigenous-owned brands. You can shop that way, which is really wonderful, curating these great brands. It's also a resource center. So if you want to learn more or go any place, you can also go to the Phluid Project's website and learn more about the community, learn about education. It's a place for people who want to be better allies, but also for the community. Wholesale, so one door closed on December 31st, 2019, thank God, 2 months before COVID, and 7,000 doors opened up. So right now, Phluid's in 7,000 doors across the country, which is incredible. So between apparel, accessories, and fragrances, we're showing up all over the place. And launching in Europe this year was Orlando, which I'm very excited. And opening up new categories next year. There's also collaborations, partnerships. We just had a great collaboration last night party launching our Happy Socks Phluid collection. It was so much fun. I'm a little bit hungover, I gotta be honest, but it was just so much fun. It was our first party in, I think, 3 years, and it felt great to be together with the community and having fun. And Aquaria was my co-host and made me look completely unfashionable and lame. Let's see, we also show up with education. We have Get Phluid, gender expansive training. We heard a little bit about that today. One of it came from the fact that when I would sit in the store, and I sat there for 2 years and was able to, one of the social codes, we had a social code, how you enter the space, things we asked people to do and how to behave. And one of the social codes was we're all students, we're all teachers. And I literally sat there every day and I listened to panels, I had conversations at the coffee shop, I had really meaningful conversations with especially the intersection of gender diverse and racially diverse young people who looked at me as the enemy, this big white old cis guy, like, what does he want with us? Was he trying to exploit us? I think there's been a lot of exploitation and a lack of trust over the years. So for those 2 years, I really built some trust and started speaking around the world in Dubai and Sao Paulo and people listening. And I'm like, wow, how can I take this and help my friends who are in corporate America? So we created Get Phluid and passed it off to folks of trans experience who wrote the programming, wrote the exercises. They teach, and it's so wonderful to see folks of trans experience at the intersection of racially diverse and gender diversity teaching, because they don't just educate, but they come with their real life experience, and it's something beautiful to witness. And even if I'm busy, I still tune in every single time, and I learn something new. And then we show up with community. It's a huge part of who we are. We're Pride 365, queer all year. We don't just do it in June, we do it all year long. We show up with our community, for our community, and then I launched the Phluid Foundation, which I'll talk more about, which is a nonprofit. And I'm excited to announce that we're gonna launch Phluid City in the metaverse pretty soon, so we can recreate that experience that was in the store, but do it virtually so everyone around the world can experience it. All right, more words. Okay, so this is how we show up. We are radically inclusive. I know, like, I'm not supposed to say radically to corporate America, but we are radically inclusive. We're radically inclusive with gender, with race, with sexual orientation, body size, ability, age, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. Like, we have a space for everyone at the Phluid Project. We have a core community I've created. They're my support system. They are I would call my board of advisors. There are 50 people from the community who love the brand and help guide me and steer me in the right direction, and I'm deeply grateful for them. This is how we show up at retail, lots of different ways, from every Nordstrom store to every Target store, which makes me feel really good. This is how we create product with Rise, so we create product responsibly. We are inclusive, both in price point and size. We go up to 5XL. And we try to find solutions. We listen to our customers and say, what are your pain points? What are your pressure points? It's really interesting in creating a swim line and intimate line right now, listening to the concerns from the community, how to provide solutions for them. And expressive, people have done gender neutral before. It's colorless, shapeless, boxy, ugly clothes that nobody looks good in, but not fluid. Fluid is like embracing shape and silhouette and color and language, and feels really great to be able to show up that way. Some of the press, some of the brands we work with, this doubled since the last time we've done it. And Get Phluid, talked a little bit about that, but this is about gender inclusive training. Why is this important? Because probably the middle statistic is the most shocking. 46% of LGBTQ plus employees hide their identities at work. And that is a shocking number, because I wouldn't expect it to be that high. But another one is 77% of Gen Zers will not go to work for a company that doesn't have gender inclusive policies. So it's about recruitment and retention, but it's also about business too. And let's see, the collective, I'll talk about that. Okay, the foundation, so we'll talk more about this. I'm gonna take away the power. All right, that's it. I did it in 10 minutes. I had a whole lot more. The deck was like so long, but I wanted to make sure we had time for questions, and and they're really good ones.
Come join me.
Oh, yeah. Can we switch seats?
Yes.
I cut myself shaving today. Have you ever done that? I was so running so fast, so I just gashed my side of my face. So you can't see my Band-Aid. I was about to take it off, but I was afraid it was not ready to be taken off yet.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So I know you have an amazing journey. Can you take us all the way back? Where did the vision for the Phluid project come from?
So
You can get real.
Can I get real? Yeah, I just want to know, like, can I get real? All right, I'm going to get real. This I usually don't do in corporate spaces, but I feel like I can be safe here. I'm going to actually go farther than I planned to. So it started off, has anyone heard of Burning Man? Yep. So I went to Burning Man, my first Burning Man, and I was blown away by the radical inclusion, the self-love, the self-acceptance, the giving. There's no money exchanged. You just give what you have and you share, and this fluidity around gender expression. You know, like by day 3, folks who like wore cargo shorts and T-shirts, they're like, "Rob, can I borrow your tights? Can you paint my nails? I'm gonna wear a tutu today." And you know, even around sexual orientation, there's a fluidity of people trying different things because it's a safe space and a construct of 75,000 people. And I came back, and I didn't know there was a saying, "Don't quit your job after your first Burning Man," but I wish I knew that because I came back and I quit my job after my first Burning Man. And I walked in and said, I just can't do this. So I gave 5 months notice, and I put on a backpack, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just knew the answer was somewhere out in the world. So I went to Central America and South America. I wanted to learn about ancient cultures, religions, civilizations, and I felt like the answer was somewhere. And I went through India, Nepal, Tibet, studying Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Islam, and then I was in Peru, and I did a month of ayahuasca, and you go in with an intention, and my intention was, what do I do with my life? And I wrote down on April 14, 2017, consider opening a gender-free, non-binary shopping environment. I wrote Phluid in quotation marks, and I said, that's what I'm gonna do. And I opened 10 months later, and that's how it happened.
Well, congratulations.
It sounds a little weird, but it's like literally, I think the universe whispered it into my ear, and I couldn't not do it. It was a force, and I literally went and looked for stores, and I found a store, and I'm like, certainly, like, it's going to be successful. And it's not the success that I thought it was, but it's on its way to being successful.
Totally. Well, when you look back on your journey and your brand as a whole, you so wonderfully represent and bring your full self to work. But how were you able to overcome that challenge and create that into a powerful force for good in the way that you have?
As I told you, these questions are so good. Everyone asks me the same dumb questions. These are nothing like I'm used to. I'm also going to get a little personal right now, and that Phluid is me. Like, I am Phluid. These values of the company are my values. The mission statement is my mission statement. And not to get a little emotional, but this is for a young queer kid who decided to transform himself, who has loved theater and art and dolls, and had a dad who was a Pittsburgh Steeler, as a father, to manifest a new kid who went to high school. And I'm like, I'm gonna play football. I'm gonna not act, go into art. I'm gonna move away from all these things that made me special and unique and create this guy that would be successful in the world. And I was successful. I passed this straight, I acted straight, I dated girls, I played football, I was super popular, and continued that into college. And I think this project is making an amends for my younger self and doing something that he would be deeply proud of.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So your impact in fashion, in marketing, in brands, so many areas, it's impressive. You've taken genderless clothing to the masses, and you're continuing to push for this large-scale embodiment of acceptance, inclusion, and fluidity. But let's talk about how you got there. Because I read in an interview that you self-funded the business out of necessity. And the reason why I'm asking this is because so many of us here lack the support from the people that we need it from most. So what is your advice for everyone in the room to get that support from their stakeholders? And how do they do so when those stakeholders are not on the same page or lack the general awareness needed for such important initiatives?
That's a big question. Let's break it down. Self-funding the business. Yeah, I just assumed everyone was going to go, Rob, you're freaking brilliant. This is amazing. How can we help investors? But when you open up a store and you do it with like something that's never been done before, and to think about who gets in their life to like create something that's never been done before. I mean, to take like an old traditional space and do something that has never been done before. Well, investors don't like that idea, just so you know. They think if it's not like, oh, Lululemon meets Reformation, of course we're going to invest in you. No, everybody looked at me like I was I had three heads when I walked in and asked for money. So it's been a journey, but deeply rewarding when I have 99% ownership of the business. And it's funny, the only people that invested in my company as angel investors were all straight. Wow. Which is really interesting because I thought all my friends would, especially in the queer community, be like, oh, Rob, this is so amazing. Of course we'll invest in you. Didn't happen that way. So I think I found allies and supporters outside of the group that I thought would. I think so it's looking into different spaces. And now the people that are investing in the company are corporations, and that feels really good. It feels because it's a two-way relationship where we can work together. And I forgot the second half of your question.
What is your advice to everyone in the room who needs that support from the stakeholders necessary to drive the initiatives that are important?
Well, I think it all starts with education. And, I talked about Get Phluid, and one of the first things that I like to do when I work with a company, we're doing Gender 101 here with Moe, which I'm super excited. But if I was in charge and somebody said, hey, Rob, you're in charge, what do we do? I would say, first of all, I want to take all the money from marketing for this, because right now ERGs have so much money and they have $10,000 to spend all year long. They're like, how do I spend $10,000? And honestly, I think it should be a $100,000 budget from marketing, because marketing is ultimately the beneficiaries of this, or one of the major beneficiaries, because you can't communicate unless you have knowledge, and to do it with authenticity and integrity. So I would do that first. And then what I do now is I work with the C-suite, and whether they want to hear it or not, but most C-suites do, is I do C-suite education. So I pull together the C-suite in a super safe space and start off and talk about kind of who I am, why I'm here, if they don't know, that I'm one of you. I'm like, I sat in your chair, I understand you have a business to run, and sometimes this stuff seems weird and soft and squishy, and you feel like you have to know it just to get by without misgendering someone and ending up, on the streets because, you screwed up. So I do education and ask, I said there's no such thing as a dumb question, although sometimes there's really dumb questions, but it's but it's really fun, and it's safe, and because sometimes leaders don't want to not know the answer in front of their employees, and so this is a great opportunity. And then we go into a SWOT to talk about what's happening in other competitors, what are they doing, and then talk about the opportunities and the challenges entering the space, and circling back and then doing a deeper dive, and then going in and doing Gender 101, which is really like educating folks on gender and gender language and pronouns and allyship, and then going into 201, which is changing culture, which is what you talked about, including the Latinx employee resource group, because once you you can't put all the pressure on the LGBTQ employee resource group. They can't just bear that. The change in culture only happens when other groups of people step in and say, hey, I just noticed you misgendered, so-and-so. Or, hey, why aren't we doing more things to support, adding a third gender on job applications? That's when change happens, when culture happens. And so that's where I get excited, is when we start to change culture. And that takes time and work. It's not one meeting. It just takes time. And what was the word about change? Like, I love that. Like, it's never ending. It's just a continuation. You never get to the finish line. It's just an ongoing process.
Well, talking about excitement, the brand has come such a long way. And you mentioned in your presentation earlier that the brands that you work with have doubled, probably tripled in the past year or so, I'm guessing. So what does the future look like for the Phluid project, and who do you envision continuing to work with? And what are the partnerships you're saying no to?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say no, by the way. I love to, when people come and say, hey, we'd like to work with you, then I scroll through their, like, Instagram. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, maybe not now. Maybe in the future, maybe if you do education, maybe if you start to have a more diverse, inclusive representation, it'd be great to work with you. But brands we're working with right now that I'm really proud of, I'll just say, like, Smirnoff. We started a campaign last year. We casted their campaign, and then we came back through. We did Bar Academy training for nightclubs, especially LGBTQ nightclub bars, and teaching about gender. And we did scenarios of what it's like in a restroom, what it's like at the door with ID, what it's like ordering a drink, and being like, hey guys, what's going on? What can I get you? Or, how you doing, sir? Like, what kind of drink can I get you? And, or even like, kind of assuming somebody orders a Cosmopolitan, like, really? I wouldn't expect that from you. I expected you to drink a beer. And just like, just ways to make a queer bar, much more inclusive. And a lot of it is generational. There's like, 50-year-old, that's not 57, but they said it's, yeah, but it's 50-year-old bartenders who don't know about gender diversity, don't know about pronouns, and unintentionally making it a really harmful place. And then we created a clothing line where all the proceeds go to the Phluid Foundation, and this year they're donating $250,000 to the Phluid Foundation, which is absolutely incredible. I think another relationship I really like is Saxoff Fifth. Started off with education, created a clothing collection for them, and 100% of the proceeds go to the Phluid Foundation, which will be about $200,000. And they're also working to help us put trans women of color into roles, into jobs that are safe, because many trans women of color are sex workers, and putting them into a safe place. But you have to educate the company first to make it an affirming space with other employees. So working on that. So those are like 360 campaigns and projects that I really like to work on.
Well, you've done a lot.
Nice.
You've challenged the norm. You're leading a cultural moment, and that's, like I said, a lot. So where do we start? Where do the marketers in the room start? And I'm going to ask for your advice again. How do you even begin to create that sort of impact?
Well, I think it's listening and learning, and just first of all, starting off knowing we don't have all the answers. We may not have any of the answers. One of my favorite stories that I'll share with you, that when I was at Macy's, we launched employee resource groups, and they asked me, like, okay, one of them was LGBTQ, and they just assumed as the executive member that would be who I'd lead, and I actually said no, I'd prefer to lead the Black female employee resource group, because there was no people of color. There was, I think, only 2 women on the executive team, and they're like, okay. So every month we met, and I sat there, and I didn't say anything. I just sat and listened, and I listened, and I listened. And about 18 months later, they said, hey, Rob, can we talk to you? I said, sure. So they closed the door, and they explained to me what racism looked like in the company, and how it was micro-racism. It was, this is your first day walking in this door, but from now on, you probably should come in and out that door, and just like little things, because there was a high turnover happening with especially Black men and Black women. And so understanding that and be able to be an advocate then, and a trusted advocate. And then one of the things I said, like, hey, are we in a safe space? Like, okay, I have a question. Is it Black or African American? Everyone went around the room and had a different answer. I'm like, oh my God, this is the way we are. We're not monolithic. We're not one. We're not going to make it easy for you to understand us, folks, because when you walk into the employee resource group, you're like, so is it queer or LGBTQ? And everyone's going to have a different answer, And it's so hard. It's complicated, and I know it is. But that's just the way life is. We're not going to make it easy for you, because it's convenient or inconvenient for you. Our identities are unique, and we just have to respect that and know that it's awkward and real. What was the second part of the question? I just wanted to share that because I want to share a vulnerable moment that I grew by stepping into a space that I didn't really belong in, but I didn't take space. I sat there and listened and learned. I think that's how we grow, is when we go into a situation. So, and not try to be like, hey, I'm here, and I'm gonna try and fix everything. Like, how can I do that? But just to show up and to listen, and it goes a long way.
I think you very much answered the question in terms of tackling such a large-scale impact, and where do you start?
And also, I mean, listen, I also start, like, when I go work with a company, the first thing I say is, why are you doing this? What's the purpose? What's your intention to do this? Is it to make more money? Is it to be a better company? And I like to understand first why. And then I also like to say, before we start educating and getting to the how, and the marketers always want to get to the how. How can I do this? How can I be more inclusive? I'm like, slow down, marketers. We'll get to you in a second. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with education. We're going to start off with why and who. We're going to understand why we're doing this and who we're doing it for. And it might take a year before you get to market it, because that's where an authentic campaign happens, is when all the work is done inside before it's done outside. And listen, I work with marketers. I love marketers, but I'm like, I gotta hold them back. You can't talk about trans day visibility until you've actually done work with the trans community and for the trans community. And that's just the reality. And you can show up for pride. And I'm gonna say something. I kind of feel like it's a warning to like everyone. I'm probably gonna piss off some of my corporate partners, but I think that I want a campaign that's like all windows or no windows. That you can't show up in windows in New York City and San Francisco, but not show up in windows in Alabama and in Texas and in Florida. And I think that we should all start to ask ourselves, where does pride, you can't do pride. You can't march down a parade unless you're gonna put a pride flag in a window in Birmingham, Alabama. Because some queer kid is gonna see that and go, I am validated. My existence matters. And we have the power to do that. That's what's incredible, is we have the power to do that. Rob Smith doesn't have the power to do that, but we as big companies have the power to do that.
So speaking of the rising generation and the next generation of queer youth, let's talk about the Phluid project. I would love for you to share a little bit more about the Phluid Foundation and how you're supporting the most at-risk LGBTQIA+ communities, and most importantly, how can everyone in the room help?
I'm just going to go back before I answer that and finish. The collaboration that I really want is with Chick-fil-A. I want Chick-fil-A to call me up and say, hey, can we partner together? I'd be like, hell yeah, let's do it. That'd be really fun. So if there's anybody at Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby, let me know. It'd be fun. I think that'd be a great collaboration. So the Phluid Foundation. So last year, I was walking around and just realizing that everyone who was supporting, which is great to support, LGBT organization, was doing Trevor Project. It was like Trevor Project, Trevor Project, Trevor Project. And I was like, wow, does everybody think we only just want to kill ourselves? And that was my message. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the Trevor Project. I love the Trevor Project, and it needs to exist. But it's so easy to give to the Trevor Project. And what I learned in my journey so far, especially working with Ali Fournet and Hedrick Martin, these amazing organizations right here in the city, that they exist all over the country, but nobody is supporting them. And we're so lucky to be in New York City, to be able to give to Ali Fournet Center, to be able to give to Hedrick Martin, to be able to give to the center and these great organizations. But who's giving to these small towns in the South where they need us the most? So I decided to create the Phluid Foundation, which is a 501c3. Basically what I do is I take money and I push it out into trans-led organizations, specifically BIPOC-led trans organizations and homeless queer youth. The reason I did that because our most at-risk in our community include trans women of color. The life expectancy of a trans woman of color is 35 years old in this country. And if you just stop and think about that, 35 years old. There are organizations that have existed for 20 years that are working to support this community, and we're getting money to the Tulip House in New Orleans, to Trans in Texas, to all these different organizations, and also homeless queer youth. That if you are going to find a homeless youth on the street, is a 50% chance they'll be LGBTQ. They've been kicked out of their house, they have nowhere to go, and there are organizations all across this country that are creating spaces for young people. So the cool thing about the Phluid Foundation is I don't take a salary as an executive director. None of my team takes a salary, so 98% of the money goes directly to these organizations. And yeah, we're tracking to raise $1 million this year from 150 last year. All of my honorarium speaking goes directly to the foundation. And it's just amazing we don't ask for grants, we just give gifts. It takes a lot of money and time, and it's really challenging to write a grant. It might even take 40% of the money you get. So I just do gifts, and I just trust the organizations that they'll know what to do with $2,500. They'll know what to do with $5,000. They'll know what to do with $10,000. And God help me that I start to give them $25,000 and $50,000 and really start to make an impact in our most at-risk in our community. So the Phluid Foundation is a national organization, soon to be a global organization. I love the Trevor Project. I love HRC. But I think there's another way to give that. Oh, the other thing we could do too is because of regional teams, we find if you have a team in Austin or if you have a team in Birmingham, Alabama, we'll find an organization that you can donate money to, but also to volunteer time for regional teams. So it's an opportunity to not just give money, but also support them with your team's help.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As a queer woman myself, I just feel incredibly honored to be on this stage with you. I'm incredibly grateful for your leadership and the impact that you're making everywhere. So thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Appreciate it.